Here I thought that Vivi Flore Ice Song episode 10 was the show this week that was going to have the most discussion, but man, episode 8 of 86 decided to come around the corner and say, hold that thought. But yeah, I just got done with the 8th episode, and this is my thoughts on it. Yeah, a lot to unpack with this episode. This is, I guess, a story beat within the world of 86 that really wants to kind of hit on the aspect of kind of like the nation's desire to almost risk all just for the sake of kind of covering the sins of its past, I guess. You know, having essentially this order given to Lena, which basically tells them, keep going, go further in, pretty much solidifying the idea that this is a death march, essentially. They're going into their execution. And even in that order, it actually states the time period is unlimited, so just keep going until, infinite time, but also retreat equals execution, essentially. So keep marching forward until you die, basically, and if you try to come back, you're going to die either way. So, yeah, and her attempts to kind of dispute this aspect doesn't really go very far. One, it doesn't go very far with Annette because she's not doing anything. She's asking Annette for help, and Annette's like, I hate you, essentially, in the end, because, as we find out, Annette essentially had a neighbor. Annette essentially is kind of projecting her own past sins on Lena. She couldn't do anything, and thus seeing her trying to do something irritates her. We kind of find out that Annette, essentially, their neighbors were friends of hers. At some point when this whole divide happened, the entire family was assigned to be part of the 86. The parents were shipped off to fight. The children were left behind. The father was going to bring them into their family, but she was being bullied at school because everybody was saying that she was friends with coloreds. And that's where you, again, get that whole aspect of the racism that starts building up for those that were sent off to be the 86. And the father was apparently interested in this particular family, the mother and the children specifically, because they had ability to kind of feel each other's emotion without having to talk. And so this was the actual creation of the pair raid system, and her father essentially went through hundreds of, it doesn't actually specify, but many lives of 86, specifically children, to essentially test out this pair raid system that it eventually became. And this kind of weighed on him so much that he eventually ended his own life, because he was trying to help these children. He was actually going to bring in the children, and she claimed that since she was fearing bullying so much, she rejected it and gave her father basically the excuse not to take them in. So again, all this aspect of what she could have done and she failed to do weighed on her so much that she despises Lena at this point, because Lena is trying to do the same thing she failed to do. Again, projecting upon her. I have to admit, I really didn't like this scene. I love the story. The story beats themselves and what Annette's going through and what Lena is going through, the history of the pair raid system and all that kind of stuff. But dang, do we have to do that? Andrew's number one most hated thing in anime, derpy faces. Having Annette suddenly have this contorted psycho face, it's like, oh gosh, please don't. Why anime do we have to do the stupid distorted psycho faces? Anyways, it was fine. Other than that, the scene was fantastic, so I loved it in the end. But yeah, and this continued to downward spiral as Lena tries to confront her uncle, and of course the uncle's like, yeah, you gotta stop. You're not gonna change nothing. I did like the fact that she did bring up the whole Saint Magnolia thing, which I don't know that they necessarily have fully told that story, maybe I've just kind of blocked it from my mind, but they're portraying Saint Magnolia as almost like a noble sacrifice, and her sacrifice saved the nation. And she's like, Saint Magnolia is supposed to protect the 86 as well. If you're claiming that, your morals is with the Republic and everything, then you should believe that Saint Magnolia would want to save the 86 as well. And he's like, you don't realize the people of this nation basically sacrificed her. They put their wealth and their greed before her and sacrificed her for it. So there ain't no nobility there as well. So you can't call upon that. But yeah, he's literally at the point where he's sick of hearing Lena, and he doesn't want to kind of acknowledge what she believes and wanting to protect these people. This is how it is. And this is really the point in which they're really driving home the idea that it's almost as if this nation, at least its leadership and even its citizens in an extent, the ones that are content with what's going on, is they want to put the idea of genocide and wiping their history sins from the map versus even winning the battle. Like, their priority isn't winning. It's almost as if their priority is actually just kind of wiping the sins from their past. They want to make sure every single 86 is wiped out before the end of this war because they don't want them to come back into the nation and then their disgusting history comes to light. Their racism and their genocide essentially would come to light, and they don't want that. They want a revisionist history where they sent out drones and saved everybody in the war. And that's like extremely sad. Like absolutely disgusting, essentially, mindset they have going forward. And of course, something that Lena is not too happy with, obviously. But other than this, obviously, we have Lena conversing with Shin. He's like, yeah, we already have the orders. We're already setting up and everything. And she's like, you don't have to do this. Just run. And he's like, no, we've found our goal that we originally set out to do, and we're going to do it. Which we end up finding out is he found his brother. And he heard his brother's voice. He knows where he's at. He's in this new machine. And they're going to go basically take out his brother. This one goal that Shin has of essentially harvesting his brother from the Legion. And they, of course, are building up their army. They're supplying themselves. They've cleaned up house. They've basically cleaned up the barracks and everything. They're set. They're not coming back. They have a mindset right now that this is the last time they're going to be there. Get in those machines and don't look back, kind of thing, which is very, very upsetting, obviously. But the other interesting thing that he says to Lena, and I guess I understand what he's technically saying. I hope I'm understanding what he's saying. He says, go past the eastern border and you'll no longer hear the Legion's voices. If anyone's left alive, help may come there. When a shepherd dies, it throws the Legion into chaos for a while. We can buy that much time, survive until the end. And so what I'm assuming this is implying is that obviously they're going to fight his brother. His brother, he's labeled a shepherd, and the shepherd essentially is one of these main Legion corps that will lead the pack of legions. And he's claiming that when they destroy that, it's going to make them go chaotic and no longer be kind of confined to their order. And thus, I'm assuming that means that once they destroy that, those legions can just come swarming in and randomly chaotic and destroy the 85, some of the 85 districts. So it implies that there is going to be a lot of chaos happening soon, and they're going to try to prevent it or slow it down, but stuff's going to happen. And this is the curious thing, because he says to go to the don't contact them again, which means that she will no longer be able to talk to him and thus hear the voices. But it's implying that if she no longer contacts him, why would she hear the voices? Unless they're implying that she now can hear the voices because she's been in contact with him so long that she needs to be on the eastern border, otherwise she's going to hear the voices. That's the only part that was very curious to me and that I don't quite understand. But other than that, yeah, it's basically implying go over to this border, get away, chaos is going to ensue once we destroy this shepherd, and you need to be as far away from it as possible, like the furthest distance from it, because I'm assuming they're meaning that this is happening on the western. I thought this was happening on the northeastern border, because I thought that they showed St. Magnolia was down here and the Legion was up northeast. So it doesn't make sense that she would say go to the eastern border, but maybe I'm getting it backwards. But yeah, pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. Of course, after the cast, we get to finally see the mindset of the brother, which destroys my theories. Bummer, but it is what it is. They don't always have to be right. But yeah, I was claiming that the brother, or what Shin was seeing of his brother strangling him, was in his head, and that he blamed himself for possibly being a beacon that drew in the Legion, and that he just blamed the death of his parents and everything. But in actuality, apparently it seemed that the brother himself was not able to kind of carry the weight of their deployment. So he's seen that his parents had died. They were labeled numbers. Like, it basically says, a notice of death, basically, and a number given to what seems like the parents, and that, they just want the next piece of equipment to come in. Here, we're deploying this number. Come on in. And he said something to the effect that his mother was deployed in his place. I don't quite get that. Again, I think that's an aspect of his psychological downbreak that was happening. But essentially, yeah, his brother, dealing with this deployment and everything, it really got to his head. He couldn't control himself, and he outburst upon his brother, and he blames himself for that. But now, again, we get him a glimpse of him. He was Harvest, and then after he blinks, he's now inside the Legion, and he's seeking to go find his brother so they can be together once again. No longer having a body to worry about. He just, in this mind within the Legion, he now just wants to seek out his brother so they can be together again. That could be, his thought process. It could be just the thought process within the Legion, not thinking right. But that's what it kind of is implying, is that him, now a Legion, wants to get his brother and bring his brother with him. So, yeah, it's pretty messed up. A lot of pretty messed up stuff there. So, yeah, I really didn't like how this episode ended, mainly because it's building up to like this final bout, and we just seen him kind of walking off into the sunset. Well, technically walking from the sunset, but anyways, or the dawn. Yeah, it just a lot of build up to this big fight, and just to kind of have it left on a cliffhanger is like, oh gosh, now we got to wait a whole week to see where this is going. But again, I'm very surprised that we're already getting into the brother. I really thought they would drag that out of it further, but I assume that that's mainly because they're going to wrap up the brother story, then kind of focus strictly on how can we bring this group back, because again, they're on a death march. They can't really just turn around and come back. But my assumption is going to be they're going to take out the brother. They're probably going to lose a lot of their remaining. I think they have like 5 left. There are not many left in the 86, or this particular group of the 86. And they're going to take out the brother. Chaos is going to ensue, and I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of destruction happening in 85. That's probably going to bring in a lot of things to light for the actual 85 districts. And then this is going to be a prime time for them to start really kind of uncovering things for the St. Magnolia, and hopefully get some some correction to how they see things. But that's this world. That's the unfortunate thing. It's like it's a very touchy subject that all this stuff is really hitting on. Obviously, this is tying a lot of parallels to what happened with World War II, and it's bringing a really interesting light to everything. Touching on a very touchy subject and doing a really awesome job of it. And man, this episode was incredible. Just like everything about this episode was incredible. A lot of really cool things they got into, and really hitting home on a lot of subjects. I will say that I admittedly, even though they seem to hit it on a whole nother level every single time, admittedly, I am getting a little bit tired of Lena running around trying to get somebody's approval on how she feels about things, because it's obviously going nowhere. But again, I kind of excuse it just because the idea that it is technically uncovering more wounds and more wounds and more wounds. Hitting Annette with it again uncovers Annette's real true feelings. Hitting on it again with the uncle really unravels his mentality with what's going on. So it's almost forgivable in that regard, but it is technically something like, I hope they don't do this again. Like, we're done. Are we done with this? Either you're to do something, Lena, or stop. I almost want to side with Annette on this. Is like, either you do something or shut up, because there's only so much whining you can do before you either do something or don't. So, yeah. And that's a little sad too, in the perspective of knowing that this is probably going to get into a fight that's going to end up with pretty much, I'm going to assume they're probably going to lose at least 3 of the remaining 5. Maybe have 1 or 2 people left with Shin in the end. But I kind of wonder if they're going to kind of end Anju at this point, which it sucks because I know that there's still a story behind her back, and I think that they probably skipped it. I think somebody commented in my last video that they don't think they're going to get into it, which that makes me assume that it was something that was actually answered, what was supposed to be answered in the last episode, and they skipped it. I hope not, because I mean, for the adaptation to point it out, but then not talk about it, doesn't make much sense. If you knew you're not going to adapt it, why show it? Again, it implies the idea that they were showing it specifically to show the horrors of the other side, but yeah. But yeah, that's my thoughts on episode 8 of 86. I hope you guys enjoyed my thoughts. If you did, leave a like down below. Comment, let me know what you thought of the episode. Subscribe if you haven't already. I hope you guys enjoyed, and y'all take care.